Hello everyone, welcome back to a new episode of the Scale Talks. Today we have Camila Brugger.
Hello, hello.
Hello Camila, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you for inviting me.
You're very welcome. Today we're going to talk about surprise, scaling stuff. And that's going to be fun because you were telling me a bit earlier that you are obsessed with scaling your business and scaling businesses and scaling mindset side of things,
Yes.
which is something I really like. So we're going to be talking about that and most particularly how to scale something that's related to outsourcing and talent.
Yes, exactly.
So just to give a short background, we are recording in Lisbon now.
Yes.
But you are from Uruguay.
Yes.
South American. You have a team. So the company is WorldTeams.
Yes.
It's based in the US,
Yes.
but the team is in South America. And
You're right.
you are outsourcing talents for architects, design firms, civil engineering firms,
Yes.
right?
Yes, construction companies and real estate companies, but mostly architects and engineering firms.
And that means you have a team of 500-ish people.
Yes.
Some of them working for you directly to run the operations.
Yes.
And the rest of those people are actually outsourced and working with the clients.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. And we got to that number like quite fast in 4 years. So that really takes like a big scaling mindset and also like.
So when did you start?
I started in the beginning of 2020.
2020, so in about 4 years, you've scaled the business from 0 to 500 people.
Yes, yes.
And multiple locations and multiple continents. Sounds
Yes.
good. Okay.
Yes, yes. But the truth is, before I started this company, as I tell you, my obsession with like growing something that was scalable came from many years ago. You know, my first time as an entrepreneur, I tried to do like earrings and these things because that's something that I enjoyed. And then I realized like, okay, I'm doing this without thinking of the model. I'm just trying to make something, a hobby that I like into a business, and it's not working.
Can you go further into that thing? Because you're saying, I have an obsession for scaling.
Yes.
Why scaling compared to just building my own business? Simple business. And why is it an obsession?
Well, because I wanted something that that once you create it, you know, like your inputs multiply. Like, so you do an effort, right? And it doesn't feel like you're, you know, rowing against the tide. And when you build something that's structured to scale, you put an input, it works, and it just multiplies. So it becomes more and more effortless to grow, to grow your profits, to build something like that. And you know, when I was in universities, it was when this whole talk of the unicorn started, right? Like everyone was talking about unicorns. So I'm talking about like 12, 13 years back. And so I was just like, okay, what is it that these people are doing, right? And anyways, with time and things, I was just like, there's a lot in the business model. And so I wanted to go into, to build a business that was right in the industry that I was getting into, that it was an industry that had room to grow, but also that it was structured in a way that it could grow easily. And I just started observing what those components meant until one day, like the opportunity presented itself, and I was like, this is it. It's like this. But then I was very careful to respect that was my goal, that there are certain things that I should always keep doing it the way I was doing it. Like, for example, I always I sell everything by the hour, right? And I always make it so that like in whatever unit that I'm getting my cost is exactly the same unit that I'm selling. Usually for me it's hours. But you don't know how many times clients and people and everyone tell me like, but why don't you sell by project, right? Like they're telling me like this eureka thing that I've never thought about. And for me, it's just because like that goes against scaling. Because once your cost unit is not the same as your selling unit, then to be efficient, you need management, right?
Yeah, it's the logic that if you need 5 people to run your team, then you're break even when you have the equivalent of how many people who can pay for those 5, and then anyone on top of that is going to be profit. So you're comparing apples to apples, something like that.
Yes, but like for example, even yesterday I had this discussion, right? When a guy told me, "Oh, I have an agency and I have graphic designers and I pay them by package." So, and I know I sell my package at, let's say, 10, and I pay the designers the same package for 5. So I make $5. Okay, that's okay. It's control. It's like same unit of cost than of selling price. But then he said, but now I want really to have a video editor in-house, so I'm going to pay him a salary, right? And anyways, I have all this content, and I've done the numbers, it's profitable. And I'm like, okay, yes, but now like your cost is not the same unit as your selling price. And the only way you're going to respect your margins if like this person is 100% productive during his time there. And to make sure that someone is 100% productive, you need to be on top of them. So there like comes management. And that's something that like companies usually like overlook from the conceptual point of view, right? Because they're like, oh, of course. And when you're 10 people, like you're like, how can I not see if so-and-so is being productive and doing all the videos? We have so much work. But if you're 500, you can't be like controlling that everyone's doing what they need to do. So like you need to put the control somewhere else. And once you set that up like from the structure, then it's a lot easier to scale.
Just to move back a second, scaling is the process of, well, that's what I define anyway, as the process of turning a business into an asset that's going to work for you, without taking more of your time.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, while taking less of your time, comparatively. But the first question is, how did you start? So we had a long chat, and a fun long chat with some sun and sunglasses and all that to prepare this. But you told me that one of the reasons why you started this was related to the way your parents were working, and you realized.
Yes, both of my parents are architects, and you know, architecture is like an unsteady industry, and also it's unsteady because architects like to be architects. So once they get the projects, they focus on the project and they forget about, you know, where the next project's gonna come from. They don't have like a continuous sales operation. So it's like, oh, project, like all these headaches, you know, to finish the project, and then now we need to start looking for a client.
Selling again.
And so I lived that very much in my childhood. We went from like, you know, amazing periods of like going to vacations to like, oh, girls, I don't know if I can, you know, you can continue in the school, if I can afford it and all that. So, so it just was very, very clear to me, like how much it was difficult for architects to be set up for a more with a more flexible structure that allowed them to have a business that they could take all the work when there was work, and like downsize when they don't. So that's why I ended up in this industry.
And so one of the things you said when we talked was there was a point in saying that scaling a business is having a team without having a team. That
Yes.
relates to that point?
Yes. Because, you know, like, and I guess my parents had one drafter that they would like outsource, but it didn't have that name way back then. But you can do so much more, you know, like you can have like your marketing team, your accounting team, you can have like your personal assistant on a more flexible contract. So that what ends up happening is that you can just take in like all the volume that comes at you when it's there. And when you're not having this super heavy burden that can sink you, when the work is not there. And so like it's a team, and you can count on them, and the people that really work for you, you keep them all the time through all types of periods. But that extra that you need when there are the biggest flows of work, well, then you can be like, okay, now I'm not gonna have you or hire you, or I'll call you when I need you.
So if we say that differently, it means that your clients call you and they say, okay, I need some help to hire someone, or someone with an S, like it can be 2 people. You said some clients are about 40 people in a team.
Yeah.
So technically the client is going to have 50 people, 50, but 42 of them are going to be your staff, outsourced, right? Which means they can use those 42 people as long as they want. It's not going to be a thing for an hour. It's going to be 5 months, 6 months, a year.
Yeah.
But they don't have to worry about, how do I recruit them? How do I find them? How do I select them? How do I train them? How do I get rid of them?
Yes.
But you can do all that. You can do the selection. You can do the management.
We are like an external HR department. So we onboard, we offboard, we select, we know their preferences. We know like their team and what works with what. We also like have monthly meetings, both with like let's say the project manager or whoever is the direct supervisor of our architect or the resource that we provided. And at the same time, like every professional has a coach that works with them monthly, to make sure that they're performing correctly. So it's very much like having an external HR department. And yeah, like you say, what ends up happening in reality is that most clients start with like, oh, okay, I need someone for some hours from some projects. Then they realize like what the people that we offer are really good, and they're very surprised. And then it almost all the time ends up into something way more steady, full-time or a part-time, but steady. And they will have some that, are for the peaks. But usually 2 or 3 they stick with, for forever on a
Which is a win-win, because
Yes.
to them it means you found some pearls that they can keep, and for you it's a recurring business model that's going to be there over time, and you don't need to worry about it anymore because the thing is rolling as long as it's rolling.
Yes. We had some clients in the Bahamas, and in the Bahamas they have you need to pay a working permit to hire foreigners, and they're quite expensive. And also, like, it's an island, so like if you hire someone that has kids, and you need to like house them and find them a school for the kids, and all this, you've maybe spent 30,000 before you even know the person's gonna work. So like with this, you can test out people and commit after if they're good or not. You don't have this huge number at the beginning, and that also works a lot.
So if we say, okay, what are the tips for scaling a company? One, there is a tip about having a good team without having the concern of the team. There is another one that's about testing.
Yes.
There is...
I mean, for me, for scaling is the first thing is that you need to be very determined about delegating. That's the first thing. Like, you need to know that it's something that it's not going to come natural. That, of course, nobody's going to do things the way you do them, but that's okay. So you have to have a little bit more tolerance for things not working out perfectly or the way that you would do them. For me, that's the biggest key of scaling. For example, like maybe 1 year into my business, I just gave my email to 2 people. And I haven't written an email or a LinkedIn post in like 3.5 years now. to anyone. So like every time it's me, it's never me. And
Don't say it. Don't say it. You should keep it as a secret.
no, I tell a lot of clients this because I tell them like, and of course, like
Sometimes it's you, right? Sometimes, every once in a while, it's you. So at least there is some doubt. Okay, keep going.
Yes.
Keep going.
And obviously at the beginning it was like nerve-wracking because it's my face, my name out there, and sometimes there were
You
like
can't control.
mistakes that just were horrible to me, and I looked like a fool, and I just grew tolerance to that. And because I grew tolerance to that, then my email is like this machine that's shooting emails and having conversations with hundreds of people that I would never be able to do, while managing a company. And this is just a stupid example, but it applies to everything, It's like once somebody else can start doing it, even if they don't do it 100% perfect, if they can do it like 80% perfect or as you would do it, then it's time to delegate. And that's like a discipline. For me, that's the biggest tip for scaling.
So that's the idea of done is better than not done.
Yeah.
Point one. But point two is because it's still difficult. I mean, people who are watching, they're thinking, okay, but she knows she's got 500 people, right? But I'm just me. So how do I know that I'm ready to do it and blah, 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 blah. One thing you said when we prepared this discussion was that you had a way to focus on looking for the top 3%. How do you do that? Why is that important to focus on getting the top 3% in your hiring pipeline? How do you get those people? How do you make sure you reduce the risk? It's a risk, but you reduce it.
Yes. Well, we just volume, like we have around 2,000 people coming into our career site every month. And then we pre-screen them a lot. They'll make the cut. We have certain specifics that we know that we need, that you can just see it from their resume,
So it's a process in the first place. You have a system that gets you candidates, and then you have another process that filters out the right ones and the one that are obviously not a fit.
Yes, exactly, all that. And then we have what I call like this active and reactive methodology, which is like we're always looking for people. We're always filtering people that we know are interesting. And we're kind of like building, let's say, like this stock, right? So I don't know, I met you, Antoine, I interviewed you, and so I start putting all the characteristics, right? And tags, I tag you on all the things, and that puts you in like, let's say, a stock. So when a client comes along, right, and they're looking for things that just resonate with the tags that we put on you, then I'm like, okay, here, Antoine, perfect.
So someone comes and says, oh, I'm looking for a guy who doesn't really think like everyone. He's out of the box. He says whatever he thinks. Can you find that? And you're like, yeah, I've got that kind of weird guy. Let's do this, let's do that. But you've filtered me out in the first place. And so you know that even if I use your email to write, it's going to be okay.
Yes. Of course, there's a margin of error, but it's like everything. Once you do it all the time, you get better at it and better at it. So we're good at perceiving certain things. And then, because we're working between cultures, there are certain things that you have to pay attention to. Like extroverts work a lot better than introverts, even if the introvert is a genius at doing their work, because you're not there. So you need someone that's loud enough to communicate when the other person's like busy or in other tasks. You need someone that's gonna knock on the door like, I'm done. Do you have something else for me? How do I do this? How can I improve all this, right? And if you have someone that's very shy, even if they can do the work properly, they're not gonna be like knocking on the door, which is very relevant for someone that is in the organization but a little bit outside and need to make their space.
It makes sense because the people who are extroverts, they tend to think in terms of being efficient, being effective, being reactive, and action and time. So their priority is going to be on action and time. Whereas someone who's an introvert is going to be more on the quality of things. And so whatever the time it takes is the quality that matters. And so what you're saying is making sense just from a behavioral kind of standpoint.
Yes, yes, yes. I mean, and sometimes like when you know like that there's a setup that will allow for this, and like there's a lot of focus, like you say, in quality, then we will look for these profiles. And usually it is like a mid-sized company that has a project manager that's going to be on top of them, that like, I don't know, they have the scheduling very organized, so like, the person knows like what their goals are and what they need to do and how the week is going to be organized, and so they can just focus on doing the work and like quality. But when you're like dealing with smaller businesses and the owner is kind of delegating while like talking to clients while organizing their own lives, like sometimes they can go 2-3 days without talking to their team members, and if they don't go after them, then they won't have any work. So it's about matching that and knowing like the things that the client won't tell you, but that like will happen, because you've seen so many that how they tend to behave. I'm sure it happens to you the same way.
But there is also the point that there is what because you're used to it, and there is what they don't know because they are not. So for instance, there is an example I quite like because it's something we see quite a lot. It's exactly based on that. You take a company, the company is growing, everyone is a bit everywhere, right? And they're looking for someone to do customer service assistant. And they're going to put an offer out there, and the offer is going to be, we look for a customer service assistant, let's say a designer assistant. The point is that's what they need from a technical CV kind of perspective, but what they actually need is not that. What they actually need, from what they don't perceive, is someone who can get out, someone who can talk to the brands, someone who can do some communication from a natural standpoint without being asked to do it because it's the time to do it.
Yes.
And that's where you have an expertise that's in terms of, you were talking about speaking the same language. Yeah. But sometimes it's also a question of knowing what language to speak so you can start breaking the mold and teaching your client, isn't it?
Yes, yes. And in fact, like that's something, it's funny the example that you mentioned, because a lot of our clients, they are like, once they get the production, okay, like a lot of like our smaller clients, they come to us because they're rejecting work, right? They don't have enough hands to do the production. So we give them production. Once that's solved, they're like, oh, I want more clients now. So they want marketing. So someone like that, like a customer, someone that manages their socials or something like that. But the thing is, they know how to manage architects, or they know how to manage, but they have no idea how to manage someone that's going to do something with marketing or with sales. And they don't put their time themselves to think about it, much less to like know what to delegate on the person. And no one can just understand your business from osmosis, like just like, oh, now I know everything about the business and like your thoughts and why you like to do things a certain way. And that like issue comes up a lot, right? So after a lot of failures in placing all sort of marketing people, we're like, okay, no, we need someone that's going to be like really pushing this guy to put the time to think about what they want like to do and achieve, and like what are they going to be the specific marketing goals. Because if we don't have someone that has that energy and has a little bit of a knowledge to force this, then it just doesn't work, because in the end it's like, oh, let's say Maria's great, but like it's actually me, the problem, I don't have time for this, so it's not gonna work every time. And when you put someone that is a little bit more pushy and, forces them to do simple things, just think of what you're gonna post in Instagram, like 3 times a week, to like focus on sending some emails to your top customers. And that kind of actions, they're like, oh, this is useful because the person narrowed it down to specific actions.
So does it mean that somehow earlier you were talking about, okay, I'm selling hours, which is usually a very bad idea when you're starting as a solo people, because when you're selling hours, you're blocking yourself because at some point you don't have enough hours anymore. So selling hours is great as a scale offer when you can actually scale it.
Yes.
But the real value you're actually offering to the clients is part hours, and part is what they don't see, which is the ability you have to know what is it that they need that they're not aware of, what is it that they want that they're not aware of either yet, and you can sell them the right hours based on not what they're asking, but what they're not asking and what they're implying and what is it that they want to do, which they're not aware of yet, right?
Yes. And it's funny, again, the topic of scaling, because what ends up happening is because we are set to scale, right? So most of our team, our internal team, is dedicated just to growth, right? Not to keeping the actual business. We come, the clients come to us with like, I need staff. But I need staff is also a scaling problem, right? Like when you come and thinking, okay, I need more people, it's because you want to grow, right? And we're like, okay, we've been focusing in learning how to grow a lot for ourselves. So let me give you a few tips like on how to do it. And then that also helps us because then they need a bigger team and that's business for us. So it like, retroalimentate. I can't find the word, but that.
You just said you had a team, and the team, part of the team is focused on sales, business development. Can you, I know your answer, but I still want you to answer it. Because again, the people who can watch this and they're trying to scale, they always have that question, which is, where should I invest next? Should I invest in a team that's going to make me sales, or should I invest in a team that can produce?
Yeah.
What's the role of that sales team? How strategic it is in your business? Can you do what you're doing without the sales team?
No. And it goes back to what I was telling you about my parents. For me, like any business needs a sales engine that's always on, period. You can't have something that is just you do in your spare time. Like it needs to be always running. And for that, you need to set it up so that it's always running. A lot of people, they say like it's a good thing, like all of our clients are referrals. And for me, that's like, well, it's wrong because you're putting your business up to the fate of something that you can't control, So like set it up so that it is something that you can control and you can measure and you can count on and you can predict. And once you have that, you can start controlling a little bit more your demand and then just structuring your production cost a lot better. So totally key.
Do you have, speaking of data, do you have an idea of what part of your turnover is made with people who refer you to other people compared to how much of it is just people you've been outreaching?
Yeah, I don't measure it in turnover, but I don't think it would be that different. It's like between 20 to like 15 to 20%.
So referral is 20%.
20%. Yes.
Okay,
yes.
So if you just count on that, your business is not scalable.
Yeah, I mean, it would scale like slow, like a lot of companies that just, base themselves on referrals do. But we like multiplied by so much in 4 years because we didn't count just with referrals.
There's that idea of saying, if you look at Coca-Cola or that kind of big brand, is it that they're growing because some friends at some point say, hey, you should try Coke? Or is it that it was actually there in the first place, which is why they thought, hey, you should try Coca-Cola, you're going to like it.
Exactly.
One is just the referral and the rest is whatever you can do so that people are going to refer you, right?
Yes, all those like actions. And it's funny because I see other businesses that in South America, they're originally owned by architects. And they sell projects outside, right? But their leaders are architects, so they think as architects, so they sell projects and they want to control the quality so much, right? And me, I come from a sales and marketing background. So for me, like my main focus was in sales and marketing. And I wasn't, like I was telling you, obsessed about quality. Like when someone didn't work, I just tell the client, okay, it doesn't matter, I'll change the person, I'll give you another person. And in this past years, I've seen a lot of these companies that they've grown, but maybe they've grown from like, I don't know, 30 to 50 people, whereas I grew from like 0 to 500, and in the same period, and yeah, and the difference was like how I looked at it and the sales part as well.
One way you look at it, if I remember what you said correctly last week. So today you were saying, I'm obsessed with scaling.
Yes.
But last week you said something else. You said people should be obsessed with team and people, not with products.
Yes.
In your case, the product and the team is kind of the same because in the end you're selling people as a service or people as a product as a service, something like that. So it's more, not confusing, but it's
that's because I structure it like that, because I could be saying I sell renders, or I sell construction documents or projects, or I sell you the project of a house, or like I sell you the balance sheet of an accountant, right? Like, and then I would be selling a product, or a project or a service, but it would have that size. And because I said, okay, no, it's a service and it's structured like in hours, then it's more about the people. But I don't even focus in the at all, actually, zero, on the people that do the job. I just focus on my management. And before that, like on the things, on the people that I was training so that they could train others to do the job. And like once it's time for a new layer, then that's the layer that I'm gonna focus in, because that multiplies. If I was trying to control the way every person that we have placed in a client works, of course, like I would be going crazy,
So you have to focus, if you want to scale a business, you have to focus on people. Sorry, you have to be obsessed with people, not products, because products don't multiply, whereas people multiply and build the scales, literally the scale of the company.
Yes, exactly. Yes. And I was having this discussion with another business owner that he does like web assets and apps and that, right? And he wanted the perfect like product, right? And and he put a lot of energy into every delivery of every product. And like those are gonna end, right? Like focus on the people that are producing your assets and making them better and making them make better decisions. Once you have that and you have like a good team that can do that, then you don't have to be so obsessed about like controlling the quality, and that can multiply.
Last point about the business, and then we can talk about the mindset. I know you like that part. The big smile says me I'm right, tells me I'm right. How about competition? You were saying that we were talking about competition, and I was saying, okay, but what's the deal when you're scaling that company, that outsourcing company, that talent management company? You have competitors, and some competitors are probably cheaper than you. Yeah. How do you manage that?
Yes. To be honest, I never, ever, ever felt competition. Zero. Because, and this was also a big learning experience for me. When I started, I thought like, I am in the outsourcing industry, so like my competitors are other outsourcing companies. And then I realized that most of my clients were people that have never tried outsourcing. So I was just like, my true competition was them hiring locally. And it was a different ballgame, you know? It was just like making them understand the benefits that having like a remote team would represent in terms of scaling, in terms of having more flexibility for these like unsteady workflows. And so I just never been bothered by competition, especially the ones that are cheaper, because usually are companies that are like from India or Philippines, and those are not in the same time zone. And, you know, not working in the same time zone tends to have efficiency problems because you're not like...
It can be interesting for people who actually look for that, but that's a value proposition they're actually looking for. So it's kind of different.
And we just integrate our team members into their team. So it's completely different. And yeah, like, honestly, I think we've been through, I don't know, more than 300 clients in these 4 years. And I don't remember once someone say, oh, no, I have this other supplier that has a better price, or never. They are like, oh, my God, like, I can't believe that this exists. It's so great, like, the people that you have. So
the tip there is to say we are not a cost, we're an investment, and we're actually better than an investment, we're value production.
Yes. I mean, we just convinced them to try it out because there is not that much of a cost to try it out. We don't ask you for any minimum of hours or anything. And once they try it out, they like it. So I don't even have to work. Once I have the meeting with the person, like, we don't even have to work that hard to convince you to try. It's like, just try it. Like, you're going to spend a few hours. If you like it, you have so much to gain, you know? And once they try it and they see the kind of people that we deal with, they're like, oh my God, this is actually great. We work with a lot of universities and institutes, and we make sure that the people that we work with are not only good technically, but that are people that you would enjoy having a dinner with. That they have that level of like cultural and alignment with our clients, that they're just interesting to spend time with. And so what happens is they end up building a connection, just like with any team member. And then that's when it really works.
Which gets us back to invest on people, not products.
Exactly.
So second big chunk, right? We're scaling.
Yes.
There's the business side, but you can't, I think anyway, you can't scale a business if you don't bring your mindset to the next level as well.
Yes.
You wrote, right? That's one of the ones you write. You wrote a LinkedIn post recently that I like because it was, I think it speaks to everyone. When you start a business, the first thing you have is not a skill, it's not value proposition, it's anxiety and self-doubt.
Yes.
How do you go from, okay, I'm going to start and I'm anxious and I have doubt, I'm shaking a bit, but
Yeah.
Okay, imposter syndrome, whatever, 500 people. What's the journey to get from zero to that?
For me, it's just doing, you know, like all the time when you're so much in your head, you're just thinking always the worst case scenario, right? And when you try it out, usually what ends up happening is not as bad as you had pictured it. So like you force yourself to do it. And I remember when I started, I said, okay, like in this business, it's going to be very important to have good contracts, because then if not, people will want to skip you very easily. But we didn't have money for a lawyer. And I was like, oh, how are we going to do this? And very stuck on this lawyer problem. And then I said, you know what, I'm just going to get a template from Google and I'm going to write a contract and by myself, and that's it. Like, because in the end, it's just going to be like very much a placebo that, you know, like, oh, there's a paper that you commit to not doing this. And, you know, we had that contract for the first 2 years and it did the job, you know? And and once I was like, okay, nobody's saying anything, that my template is very bad. so okay, let's run with it, and little things like that, okay, I don't know this, or the first phone call that I did to a client, like, I was calling everyone, but it was not getting through until one time it did. And I was so surprised that someone said hello, right? And that I got nervous and I just hung up,
Oh, yeah?
Yes, because it was like, now, I really need to, and words wouldn't come out. And I was stuttering, and, the English part was even harder, like that okay, it's go time. And then the second time it was better, So
Was it the same person, or did you
no,
just keep that number? Okay.
another. Yeah. And then that's something that I also learned along the way. Obviously, I work for a very big market, and I also supply the business with a whole continent. So like, even if I mess up one call and it doesn't work, it doesn't matter. There's gonna be thousands and thousands of others that I can call. So just that, like, not thinking that if, like, what's the worst that can happen? That one person in the US thinks that I'm the biggest idiot, or that my company, who cares? There's always a second chance. It's not like my service or my product is something that I can only sell in a little village that everybody knows each other, and it's very limited. So I can try and try and try and try, and I have that room for error.
The mindset is something you get when you're born, or is it something you can build and improve?
I think it's a little bit of both, There's something definitely that has to do with what comes with you, your personality, and like your
Education.
Yeah, your education, and how curious you are, and how much you observe patterns instead of just things, like you observe behaviors. I think mindset has a lot to do with that, just observing how people behave and what works and doesn't work, and then what can be applied to you. But definitely education also helps, you start talking to people that have done well. And I don't mean well just in the terms of like they grew a big company, but that their life is very aligned with what they wanted their life to be. And then you'll always end up in mindset, So you start talking to people that are living the life that they wanted, and the mindset talk always comes up, Like they're very proactive into coaching themselves to deal with imposter syndrome, to like...
Which is a big topic that you see a lot.
Yes, being resilient, just like when things get bad, stop obsessing about a problem, like discipline yourself to let go of certain things, all those things.
Just daring as well.
Yeah.
So that's your mindset. At the same time, when you work with a lot of companies and you need to push the message that, you know what, if you hire someone through me instead of looking for it yourself, doing it yourself, managing it yourself, dealing with the trouble yourself, you're going to make money out of it, and you're going to gain freedom, right? Yeah. You need to push people to change their own mindset to things. Do you have tips on how to change not just your mindset, but also the mindset of people who are working around you and evolving around you?
Yes, I do, because I have to coach my account managers to do that, because now it's like them talking to people. The first thing is, people like validation. So you say, we talk to X amount of people, or have other clients in your same situation, and this is what they did. So that is like, I'm not telling you what I think that you should do. I'm just telling you this is what others do. These are other examples of people that did this and did well.
And it works.
And it works. So that's the first, and that's the thing that people are more open about, and they take it, because it's like, oh, if this worked for another person just like me, then probably works for me. So that's a big one. And one that like I've been using recently, and it's a little bit like poking them.
Poking is good. It works all the time.
Yes, that I say because I believe so. Like delegating, being able to delegate has a lot to do with being humble, you know, with thinking I'm not going to put myself in the position that I'm, the only one that could do this. You know, if I don't do it, then like it's never going to work. If you have to believe that if you die tomorrow,
Someone else can.
someone else can do it, right? And no one likes to think that they're not humble enough, like that they're just an egomaniac that thinks that they can be better than anyone. So once you put that, like, they're like, huh, they don't like it. So they're like, okay, yeah, maybe I should think about this, maybe I should question if I'm the only person that can do this. And they start being more open about it.
Another topic is you need to change, maybe not change, but you need to provoke the mindset of the people you want to work with. But eventually you work with the boss, and in the end you have to work with their team. Is there any resistance with the team?
100%.
And how do you reduce that kind of friction? How do you reduce the resistance from the teams you have to work with? And how do you work on their own mindset?
Yes. Well, that's a big one for us because for us, it's very easy to convince the owner that this is something that's going to bring a lot of benefits. But then, like, for the management, usually they're like, they thought they had a budget to hire locally. Now they have this team in South America that
Where are
they're
they
far
coming
away and don't speak like exactly the same language and are not used to the terms and are not there. And so there is a lot of resistance. So we're always working on this. But one thing that has actually worked a lot is we tell the owners, listen, the management needs to hire the team. Like whoever's gonna be working with this team needs to go through the interviews and make the choice, because it's like everything. Like once it's your choice, then you like put an effort to make it work. You're kind of responsible. If it got pushed on you, you're just gonna resist it. So we ask that the person that's then gonna work with the resource is absolutely like involved in the recruiting process and choosing the person and deciding, or is this because of this reason or that, and then they're like, okay, it changes the game.
It's giving the power to the people who actually do things.
Yes, exactly. Yes. And then they have different goals, like the owner wants to obviously reduce cost and scale and this, and the project manager wants to do a good job, get the deliveries, and also they like to feel important,
Everyone does.
Everyone does. And so as long as you are working with a person, making them like feel relevant, understanding that they're the boss of the situation, even though you have a contact with their own boss, but in this scenario, you want them to be happy and them to achieve their own goals and them to like have the resource work the way they want it to work. Even if the owner is telling you something slightly different, you have to respect what they're saying and listen to them and make sure that they know that you're actually listening, not just pretending to listen, And that also kind of changes things.
Somehow it relates to the notion of obviously organizational leadership and situational leadership, as in someone in the team is just, you think, not good enough, so you're just going to tell them what to do.
Yeah.
And you're going to lose them because you just tell them what to do. Yeah. And then there is a stage where they gain in autonomy and they want to do more. So you're going to coach them and you're going to be like provoking and pushing and all that. Yeah. And then there is going to be the stage where you've coached them enough so they can do it on their own. So you're just going to be mentoring them, which is not in front, but behind.
Yeah.
Patting their shoulders saying, okay, I'm here if you need me, but you don't, just keep going.
Yeah.
And that's that kind of curve that you need to achieve where you tell people, you know what, I'm here to start it, but then that's your job. Do it.
Yes. I tell most people in my team, like, there are different types of control. Like, don't go into task control. Like, if you have if you're just controlling emails, did you do this? Did you do that? Like, you're basically like spending the same amount of hours to make someone work that the person's actually working. So it's like a very inefficient control. So control it with objectives. If you want to do random controls, like, like at some point be like, oh, let's see how you did it with this call, or let's check this email, but as an example, not you're checking every email that they sent. And then, yes, and then motivation, and then guidelines. But I think a lot of what you're saying has to do with control. And with my clients, that's also a big mindset change, because they're used to controlling with tasks. Like, you did this, you did that, like, do this that way, right? And so it feels very inefficient because, you don't let go.
So that's the team size, the team side of the mindset scaling. If we go back to you being an entrepreneur, and you having a business to develop, are there any things that are important in terms of entrepreneurial mindset? Like, just an example, but it doesn't have to be this one. Letting the cheap bastard go. I love that expression. Things like, okay, we have clients, but is every client our ideal client? And are we happy to just tell the client, to let the client tell us what they want and they think they're right, so they're right? Or should we sometimes stop them? Should we choose the clients we work with? Are there things that we can do as entrepreneurs to just make it to the next level? But it's in your head first.
Yes, letting the cheap bastard go. Yeah. So again, for me, it has to do with like time and resources. And time is not just time, but it's the emotional time when something, like when you have a difficult client that they tell you things that upset you, right? Maybe you spend a week, discussing with them in your head, a week that you could have dedicated to a lot more productive things. So like, you also have to, or at least I try to think about that time and how I want to allocate it. And when I start seeing that certain things are taking most of my headspace, and I'm not getting the most return out of that, then it's like, it's time to cut it off, and also being very aware of that. When something is just like, when a person's, it doesn't matter if it's like a client or a team member, but it's a lot of noise, a lot of, just making, just fighting you for everything, fighting you for every invoice, fighting you for, and they're not like paying you a lot of money.
But they take most of your mental space.
They take more of your mental space. The cost of opportunity of that mental space is huge, because you can be creating and doing so much more with that. And it's about that cost of opportunity. You don't see it, the dollars that are not coming in because of that time you spent obsessing about a small client that does a lot of noise, but it's there. And once you start, like, with plants, cutting the bad roots and this, then the plant flourishes a lot more.
So that's the time and resources. How about emotions? Cutting the emotional side out, and is it relevant?
Well, I mean, we're not robots, right? And like, sometimes it's very hard to get of this, and sometimes this is a very big client, so you can't afford to do it. And so that's when you need to coach yourself, go to the psychologist, or like to deal with the emotion and like I was saying earlier, let go. But there are times where it's just like, cut the problem, and like, you cut the person and the discussion goes away, because the person is very difficult for real. And like I say, it can be someone on your team, and it can be a client, or it could be a supplier. It's just a person that just likes to make trouble because that's their way of doing things, and a little bit toxic. I don't know. And it's not that you can go through life avoiding this, but you can just avoid a certain amount. Like if you have a business where there's so much like space to grow, you can choose a little bit like your fights.
So that's a lot of topics. If I try to isolate a few, tips that we want people to remember, there would be have a team, not necessarily with your own team, but have a team. Mm-hmm. Have a sales engine that's always running. Grow tolerance. Be determined about delegating, because that's the key. Don't look for perfection, but get things going. Do stuff, and you can adapt. If you have doubts, wonder what's the worst thing you could get anyway, and think there's going to be a check and sense in 10 seconds. And I like the last one about making sure that your mental space is not wasted, because mental space wasted is a cost of opportunity.
Yes.
What else? What would you be your key takes out of that? Something I didn't mention?
Well, I think you've mentioned quite a few points. And this is a very simple tip, but like having an assistant like directly to you, someone that just helps you not only with your business but also with your personal things. That's also like it has a fantastic impact on your productivity, because sometimes like I don't know, like you have all these little tasks that your spouse asked you to do, or these, or I don't know, it's your children or whatever, right? And they're just also taking a lot of headspace. And again, like business owners are like, this is not my priority. But once you have someone that helps you organize your own time and your own priorities, then a lot more time pops up in a lot of things, because you start using it in more productive things.
Yeah. Okay, so use your time.
Yes.
Use your time well as
get help for you. Get help for you. Don't think that that's a privilege or not a priority. Like, you are the priority of your business.
That's a good one to close things, right?
Yes.
So, well, that's a lot of ideas. You are the priority. Focus on that. Don't forget to like, comment, follow the channel, and the rest. Camila, thank you very much for your time.
Thank
you very much for being here and sharing all that wisdom.
Thank you.
And see you again next time.
Yes, of course. Bye.
Bye, everyone.